Thank you very much for coming in today. I would like to ask you all to rise for a minute of silence for the innocent souls massacred yesterday at the crack of dawn in Egypt. Thank you. Amongst those massacred yesterday are colleagues and journalists who were killed on the course of duty to convey the truth to the rest of the world. We pay our condolences to the families and the loved ones of those journalists who were indiscriminately murdered. We stand before you today putting aside our politics, ethnicities, or any other allegiances. What binds us today is our humanity and our heartfelt concern. I was hoping we would meet to celebrate the achievement of the dream of the biggest democracy in the Middle East. However, we're meeting today witnessing the worst state-led massacre in the modern history of Egypt. An unprecedented massacre against humanity was committed by the military junta and its civilian facade under the silence of the international community. In absence of reasoned arguments, the putschists and their civilian lackeys resorted to murder. You know a tree from its fruit, and you know a military coup from its massacres. We've seen a massacre after the other since the military coup was orchestrated on the 3rd of July. Over 2,000 innocent, peaceful civilians were murdered in cold blood in a criminal disregard to the sanctity of human lives yesterday. We have seen targeting of women. We have seen targeting of journalists. They don't want their massacres to be documented. Spontaneously, hundreds of thousands of Egyptians took the streets in every province of Egypt yesterday against this crime. This led to further loss of innocent lives. We emphasize the massacre yesterday was orchestrated against peaceful, armless civilians demanding the return of their democratic institutions. The program for today, we have two representatives of British Egyptians for Democracy who are going to speak. First of all, they're going to speak about the facts of what happened yesterday from the makeshift field hospital. Second, they're going to relay the demands for today. We also have Doyle from Caabu. We have Mohamed Jamil from the Arab Organization of Human Rights in the UK. I would like to start by asking Fatima Saeed from the British Egyptians for Democracy to step in and give us the facts of what happened yesterday in Egypt.
Hello, everyone. Can everyone hear me? I'd like to, first of all, thank you all for coming today. I'm going to speak, first of all, about what happened in Rabaa yesterday, the death toll and those injured. So the attack yesterday in Rabaa started at 6:15 a.m. So it was dawn time in Egypt. And within 30 minutes of the attack starting, the Rabaa field hospital, in Rabaa was absolutely filled to full capacity with injured and with dead. In 10 minutes, 10 people were killed. In 15 minutes, 15 people were killed. So that's a rate of one person dying every single minute. The official statistics now from the Ministry of Health in Egypt, they say that 525 people have died. Yet in one mosque out of 10 being used to house the corpses and bodies of those killed, because the morgues are absolutely full, there are 600 names. So if that's one mosque with 600 names of people that are housed inside, how can the Ministry of Health come out and say that only 525 people have been killed? Another point I'd like to address is that the Prime Minister Hazem al-Bablawi, he came out and said that he's not sure whether live bullets were used or not. And he said that only tear gas was used. Tear gas does not make holes in brains. Tear gas does not blow people's brains up, and that's the kind of injuries that the Rabaa Field Hospital was receiving yesterday. Live bullets were used. All those killed were killed by live bullets. Many were also burned alive. And in one of the mosques, specifically Iman Mosque in Cairo, this number has been verified by the Human Rights Watch. Over 300 bodies in the mosque, and over 100 of them have been burned alive. So many of them have been subject to this death. In a morgue, in Zenhum morgue, there were so many bodies, they had to actually pile them outside on the street. The morgue itself could not accommodate the number of bodies. Another shocking thing that we're seeing now, and I think this is important to point out, that the Ministry of Health cannot record a death unless it's received the body. And what's happening now is that families who have come to collect the bodies of their loved ones are being told that we won't give you the body unless you sign official papers saying that they either died of a natural cause or they committed suicide. And we have one confirmed case of this. Ahmed Badir, his brother Amir Badir, he was killed. When he went to collect his body, they told him, we will not give you the body unless you say he died of a heart attack. So that's something that's really shocking. It's quite a shocking development. In terms of journalists who have been targeted, and journalists were clearly targeted in yesterday's attack, we have 3 names. Many were killed. We do not have confirmed numbers. It's very hard to confirm these numbers because they're still counting. I know everyone knows Michael Dean. We send our heartfelt condolences to the families of these journalists. Michael Dean, the cameraman for Sky News, Habib Abdulaziz, who worked for Gulf News, Islam Abbas, who worked for Ikhwan Online, so he was for a Muslim Brotherhood paper. And in terms of those injured, we have Asma Wagih. She works for Reuters. She was shot in the leg. Ahmed Naggar, Mustafa Shimi, Ahmed Tarana, Hamad al-Rassam, and Abdullah Shami. He is actually detained. We do not know how many journalists have been detained. There could be at least over 10 detained journalists. What we're also seeing, and this has been confirmed by a number of different journalists from Reuters, from Al Jazeera, that when they're going to the airport, their equipment is being confiscated. Any photos they have on there are being deleted. If the military do not want to hide anything, if the military really say that they were just clearing out terrorists, why are they deleting the pictures of deaths and crimes, the crimes of the military junta from the cameras of these journalists? If they have nothing to hide, why are they targeting cameramen? And that's a real question that has to be asked. Clearly, they don't want independent witnesses to verify what's happening. And we're speaking to you as journalists today. Journalists in Egypt are being targeted. They're not being allowed to carry out their jobs properly. So this is the situation so far. So the Ministry of Health is saying 525 people killed. The number is much higher. We just spoke to the spokesperson from the Rabaa Field Hospital. He confirmed that 2,600 people have been killed so far. The number is on the rise. 8,000 people have been injured. They don't have the capabilities and the facilities to actually treat a lot of them. So that number is on the rise. So this confirms that this is the worst state-led massacre in the history of the country. So thank you for that.
Thanks. We've all seen the video of Ahmed Asim, who is the young journalist who captured his own murder by his own lens during the Republican Guard massacre. His fiancée and the mother of his fiancée were killed yesterday, which is the consistent murder and violence we've been seeing from this military junta ever since the coup was orchestrated. The the crime against humanity that was committed yesterday is beyond description. We'll provide everyone in the audience today a USB in containing pictures and videos captured by our friends and fellows in Egypt. We find there is a complete media blackout, and we think it is important to tell the world the truth of what is happening. Now I would like to present Shadi. Shadi is a member of British Egyptians for Democracy. He is going to state the demands of Free Egypt Alliance. Please, Shadi, step in.
First, I would like to introduce myself. My name is Shadi Khalifa, and I would like to say hi, and it's an honor to be here speaking. Today we're here for a reason, and for a cause, and for a purpose, and that is the massacre that happened against the Egyptians in the dawn while they were praying and being brutally attacked. We're here to speak for the Egyptians that have voice which is unheard. Today, we are here demanding for the world, for the international law to take a position, to take a role, and to stand against what happened. Today, we are bringing awareness. Today, we are speaking for those who died and the blood spilled in the streets of Egypt, and for those whose bodies burnt, and for those who die and injured in the hospital, and for those who've been burned in the hospital to hide the evidence, to destroy what just happened in Egypt. Today, we are speaking of the alien attack. Today, we stand against the injustice and the injustice which has been brought from the military coup. Our message is simple, and our message will be clear. Our words are clear. Our objectives and aims are clear. Our speech is clear. And today our demands will be clear, and it should be heard. We are Egyptians in London, the British Egyptians standing against the military coup. And we here today, with all the Egyptians in London, gathered to speak out loud and to show the world that our demand will be heard, and we will not be quiet. Here today, we will carry on with the message we need to send, the message we need to carry on, the message which we started with in 2011, 25th of January. This is the message which we stand here today and carry on speaking for. We demand, and our demands must be heard, because 2,000 plus, 3,000 plus, to be dead in one day, to be killed, to be shot, it's not a human attack. It's not a human mind. It's not a human heart. Repeating the alien attack. Our demands is that the world must condemn the killing of the innocent protesters who are in Rabaa Adawiyya, calmly protesting, peacefully protesting, and peacefully just speaking what they want. Speaking against a military coup, and no one can deny that it is a military coup. Second demand is calling for an international investigation into what happened. Third demand, call for all charges to be taken against humanity to be brought against the perpetrators. Fourth demand, boycotting all present administration which oversaw and ordered for this brutal massacre. The fifth demand, stopping all aid and terminating trade deals with the military regime. Our sixth demand, investigating media streams which funded and supported the coup and its crimes. Our seventh demand, an immediate release of our elected President Morsi, which was the start of democracy in Egypt, and our elected President Morsi and all the political prisoners. Our eighth demand, full and unrestricted access of human rights groups to enter Egypt. an organization to investigate the crimes that have been committed from this military coup. Our ninth demand is to reinstatement of the democracy system immediately must be taken and revoking the state of emergency. These are the 9 demands which the Egyptians have to send around the world. And these are the 9 demands that we speak of and must be heard. So thank you for today.
Thank you. Thank you for British Egyptians for Democracy. Our next speaker is Chris Doyle, the director of Caabu, the Council for Arab-British Understanding.
Thank you very much. Yes, my name is Chris Doyle. I'm the director of the Council for Arab-British Understanding, Caabu, an NGO based here in London. And I speak today as somebody who lived in Egypt, who is privileged to do so, who was welcomed in Egypt, and who loves the country and is anxious to see it take that journey from dictatorship to democracy, and who cannot but be appalled at the carnage and the bloodbath that has been seen on the streets of Egypt yesterday, and I fear the carnage to come. But I do speak, though, not as an Egyptian, and not as somebody affiliated with one party or faction. The Middle East has been scarred with both predictable and unpredictable crises in the last few years, but the events of yesterday were definitely in the predictable category, something that was just almost inevitable after the coup, and yes, it is a coup, 6 weeks ago. It was preventable, it was unnecessary, and it has disastrous consequences for all of Egypt. And it's quite clear that the stakes now are extremely high and that this crisis can run and run. The idea that the state of emergency will last just 1 month, I think, will soon prove to be wrong. And I should stress, of course, that it's all made worse, that it's not happening in isolation, that we look across the region and we see the appalling crises in Syria, where so many of the same scenes, if not worse, have been seen, in Iraq and the deteriorating situation there, as well as in other states. So in Cairo, what we have seen, and in other cities in Egypt, mosques have become morgues, churches become ashes, and sit-ins have become shootouts. And violence has begat violence, as we all knew it would. And it makes one wonder, when regimes and governments praise security forces for showing restraint, as they have done now, exactly what a lack of restraint would entail. It was quite clear for the last 6 weeks that the only way forward was the politics of consensus, of national unity, of dialogue. But very sadly, after these events, it's very difficult to see where that middle ground is now, and to get the necessary sides to sit down and talk and reach the sort of national deal to save Egypt. And for the Brotherhood, does it now get driven underground? Is this where politics is going to take place as it did in the Mubarak era? Their leaders arrested, they should be released as they count their fatalities, and no doubt the funerals today and the subsequent marches may lead to further bloodshed, I fear. Of course, more broadly, the great challenge for Egypt and other countries in transition is exactly that they are in transition. This is not, as some have said, a failure of democracy. I say that because whilst there was a democratically elected president, Egypt was not yet a fully formed democracy. It had aspects of democracy, but democracies take time to mature, to have the free and independent judiciary, the independent military and security services accountable to the people, the free and independent responsible media, and indeed a free and independent opposition that understands its role within politics. And, you know, in all of this, there is blame to be shared around. Nobody comes out of this, including in the international community, devoid of it. And I have to say that includes some within the Muslim Brotherhood who have also not necessarily acted always in the national interest. And so, where does it go on now? Predictions are very risky. As I said, I think the crisis will continue with greater bloodshed and destruction. The economy will go from an already precarious position to disaster. And perhaps the greatest fear of many Egyptians that will be the return of the security state, that Egypt will return to the 24th of January 2011 situation. And what's the solution? Well, internationally, I think the great powers, what people term the international community, does have to take a stand. I don't think it's very difficult to look up the definition of coup in the dictionary, a violence or illegal change of government as cited in the Oxford English Dictionary. I think that should be stated. Is it really tenable that there is not an arms ban to Egypt? The EU should introduce one now. We cannot be selling arms to repressive regimes, and whilst this repression goes on, that should stop. And indeed, those who have been arrested should be released or taken through a proper judicial process. And of course, ultimately, I'm sure what we would all like to see is a return to full democratic life in Egypt in a safe and secure, prosperous environment. But as I said, I fear the events of yesterday have set that back many a year. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. The pictures you're seeing the speakers are presenting are a bit graphic, but those are the pictures that were prevented to come out on international media. I apologize for them, but we'll provide them for you, and you have full rights. We retain no copyright for them, and you're welcome to use them in whichever suitable way. I would like to ask Mr. Mohamed Jamil, the director of the Arab Organization for Human Rights in the UK, to give us a short statement.
Good afternoon. An assault took place yesterday from the early morning against the peaceful protesters in Rabaa al-Adawiyya and Al-Nahda squares that resulted in hundreds of deaths and wounded. Starting the assault with such a huge number of victims mean that Egypt had entered a dangerous stage of chaos. Chaos that erupted yesterday morning in Egypt at the hands of the army and security services, and thugs will not be limited to Egypt, but it may expand to threaten the region and international safety and security. So, the Arab Organization for Human Rights in UK affirms the following: all parts took part in this assault, and the previous assaults are committing crimes against humanity. The fall down of hundreds of victims in the very early minutes of the assault stresses that the protesters were peaceful, and claims about existence of weapons in the squares were mere lies. AOHR UK blames the international community for the fall down of the victims in the streets of Egypt because it kept silence all the times when it was able to carry out certain measures that could have prevented the occurrence of this massacre and other massacres. These crimes will be subject of a prosecution at the international level, either through International Criminal Court or according to the universal jurisdiction. Thank you.
In a couple of minutes' time, we'll be showing a video, a very short video, just to give you a snapshot of the horrific scene that was in Egypt yesterday. Egypt, my home country. As a young Egyptian, before everything else, I tell General Sisi, the leader of the military junta, who's backing a dictatorship, I'm telling him, Sisi, you'll become older, and we will get our democracy back. We will get our dream of free Egypt back. I would like to invite Mr. Osama Rushdie, an official member of the National Council for Human Rights in Egypt, to address us with a short speech that will be in Arabic and translated in English.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm Osama Rushdie. I'm a member of Egyptian National Council of Human Rights. I'm preferring to speak in Arabic and my colleague will translate it. الانقلاب العسكري في مصر دمر في أيام قليلة ما بنيناه من قيم دستورية وشرعية لحماية الحقوق والحريات في مصر في خلال العامين ونصف بعد الثورة، ثورة 25 يناير. لم يكن هناك أي مبرر سياسي أو قانوني أو أخلاقي للانقلاب على رئيس مدني منتخب بشكل ديمقراطي سعى لدعم الحقوق والحريات من خلال دستور عظيم توافق عليه الشعب المصري. أدعوكم للاطلاع عليه حتى تدركوا حجم التشويه المتعمد لما بنيناه من شرعية خلال 5 انتخابات متتالية على مدار العامين الماضيين. أكمل؟ مصر كانت مدعوة لانتخابات مجلس نواب جديد، كانت الأغلبية منه ستشكل الحكومة التي تتمتع لأول مرة بصلاحيات واسعة في الدستور الجديد الذي تآمروا على تعطيله. الانقلاب العسكري لم يقتل الآلاف فقط خلال الأسابيع الماضية، بل ذبح الديمقراطية وأقام الآن يحاول إقامة نظام فاشي عنصري يقوم على الإقصاء وحرمان الأغلبية التي فازت من قبل في الانتخابات الحرة من ممارسة العمل السياسي. لقد تربع على مقاعد السلطة الآن الفشلة الذين فشلوا في الانتخابات بينما زجوا بالمنتخبين الذين انتخبهم الشعب المصري إلى السجون. وأنا كعضو في المجلس القومي لحقوق الإنسان أدعو كل الأحرار في العالم للتضامن. المجتمع الدولي يتضامن معنا لمنع من ارتكبوا أو للحيلولة بين من ارتكبوا جرائم ضد الإنسانية ومذابح ضد الأبرياء أن يفلتوا من العقاب. إننا نطالب بالإفراج عن الرئيس المنتخب الشرعي الدكتور محمد مرسي وعن كل السياسيين والقيادات الحزبية المسجونة الآن في السجون. ولن تحل المشكلة في مصر إلا من خلال الحوار السياسي الذي يقوم على أساس احترام الشرعية واحترام الدستور الذي بناه المصريين ووافقوا عليه في انتخابات حرة وديمقراطية. وشكرا.
The military coup in Egypt completely decimated constitutional principles that were built to protect the rights and freedoms of all Egyptians. There is absolutely no political, legal, or moral justification for a military coup against a democratically elected president. This president made every effort to support rights and freedoms through a constitution which I invite you all to view in order to see the extent of distortion aimed at success resultant of 5 successive elections over a period of 2 years. Egypt was in the process of electing a new Supreme Council. The majority of members agreed to leading a government which would enjoy wide-ranging powers, allowing them to change the new constitution, powers which were never before experienced in the history of Egypt. The military coup did not only kill thousands during these short weeks, but murdered democracy itself. What is now in place is an enforced fascist system, a failing system which depends on the exclusion of a freely and democratically elected majority and deprives this majority of legitimate political participation built on the will of the masses. Those who have stolen power now sit squarely on thrones, and those who are democratically elected are those who were democratically elected are relegated to prisons. I urge you all, as a member of the Supreme Council for Human Rights, I urge you all to stand in solidarity with the Egyptian people as a global community, to urge you all to stand in solidarity with the Egyptian people in order to support tolerance, in order to support freedom of speech, in order to support human rights. And I insist, I demand that the release of the first freely democratically elected president, Dr. Mohamed Morsi, and every single political figure and every single political leader who is languishing in prisons. And I insist that solutions to this situation cannot take place unless it is by free dialogue, and dialogue that is built upon constitutional and legal rights. Thank you.
As you've seen, they've been burning tents where women and children were taking refuge. I lost yesterday, personally, 5 friends. We've been peaceful, we are peaceful, and we'll stay peaceful. This is my message for you today. They prevented paramedics from getting supplies to people. Bodies were piled up in the makeshift field hospital. There are no words can describe the atrocities of what happened yesterday, and that can continue to happen under this military junta rule. I'm happy to take questions as a representative of the Muslim Brotherhood in the UK. My colleagues from British Egyptians for Democracy are also happy to take questions. And Chris is also happy. Chris and human rights organizations are also happy to take questions from any journalists. The mic will go around. I'm happy to take a few questions. Volunteers? Please introduce yourself, which TV channel do you come with, and we're happy to take your questions. Is it not on?
Darren McCaffrey from Sky News. You talked about the targeting of journalists. I mean, what evidence? I mean, are you suggesting that the kind of assassination? So, and what evidence do you have for that claim?
I'm sorry for the loss of your colleague, Michael Dean. I offer you my sincere condolences. The evidence we have in hand are witnesses and doctors from the makeshift field hospital. International world was not allowed in the square. People weren't able to see what was happening. They deleted the photos, and these are some of the footages we were able to get. But our main evidence we have is from eyewitness accounts and makeshift field hospitals, doctors who volunteered to actually look after the people who were attacked during those massacres.
Thank you for the opportunity. I'm Joris Levering from Think Africa Press. I'd like to inquire about the ongoing popular unrest, the violence on the streets, so much casualties again today. What is the strategy of the Muslim Brotherhood in stopping any kind of violence from any side? How does it communicate with its supporters on the ground who are committing violence at the moment? For example, today the burning of the government building in Giza. I'm saying it's violence from all sides. I'm not blaming anyone. I'm just asking what is the strategy of the Muslim Brotherhood in addressing this issue. Thank you.
Thank you. For the past 6 weeks, the protests in Rabaa and Nahda have been largely peaceful, and this was under the scrutiny of international media and international witnesses. So they've been peaceful, and we are peaceful. We think the violence we're seeing on the streets, we believe the violence we're seeing on the streets is unilateral and excessive. All the violence we're seeing on the streets of Egypt is coming from one side, is coming from the side of the military junta and its civilian facades. Who did not stand up to condemn this. The military junta also has impunity. They are the cheerleaders of the military junta now. They're put in power by this military junta, and they won't be able to hold it accountable against these crimes. The unrest we're seeing in Egypt at the moment is spontaneous. So the decentralized nationwide protest we're seeing in Egypt is not controlled by anyone. The protests went out spontaneously when everyone in Egypt heard about the massacre that began at the crack of dawn. We condemn any sort of violence. The Muslim Brotherhood is peaceful, has been peaceful, and will always be peaceful. Our peacefulness is a strategic and a moral obligation for us. We condemn any violence against any minorities. We do not support any violence. We hold the current authorities responsible for any violence. They should protect the Egyptian citizens. It is their responsibility, and we hold them responsible for that, and the international community should hold them responsible for that.
Hi, my name is Stephanie Ott. I'm from CNN. You said that over 2,600 people were killed. What is that number based on? You said you had a source at Rabaa Field Hospital. Is that number just in Rabaa Field Hospital? Thanks.
This was an official statement given to us 2 hours ago by the spokesman of the makeshift hospital of Rabaa. There's a building which is 6 stories high next to the Rabaa mosque, to those who have been in Nasr city. Those 6 stories, at least 4 stories of them, were full of bodies. Bodies were piling up, and then they burnt the bodies. So most of the bodies present there are unidentifiable. Our main source and our main reference is the makeshift field hospital. You'll see more pictures in the USB flash memory stick we're giving you of the piled bodies around we'll be providing to you later. Any further questions? So we thank you all for attending today. We'd be happy to organize some interviews. Salman will organize any interviews with any of our speakers today. Thank you very much for coming in today. And please make sure you take your memory stick with you.